Scott, when did you?
Pull up a chair.
Okay, thank you. When did you, come into the wine business?
Long time ago.
Long time ago.
Yeah, right. Oh, I started planting grapes here in 1972.
In '72.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were first planting, and how did you choose this riverbed?
Well, this was family farm ground.
Okay.
So we had other properties. We looked at hillside properties that we had, and we looked at this ground here. It just seemed like this was our best shot. And
What made it? Because it's like, well, what was the decision?
Well, we spent a lot of time working with fellows in California, with universities in California.
Like Davis and.
Mm-hmm. Looking at hillside versus bottom ground for grape production, and found out that the old theory that rich ground didn't make good grapes for wine pretty well shot to hell because of their experience with growing grapes, and working with people like from Australia and New Zealand, which are a lot of the vineyard ground down there is on really rich volcanic soils, and they do really well, and so we knew it could be done. It's just a matter of maybe how you approach. We knew there would be a couple of problems, okay, and so we were addressing those as quickly as we could. One was the fact that rich ground was going to produce a lot of vigor, a lot of growth, and
a lot of vegetation.
A lot of vegetation, which was a concern of ours. And then which was a major concern really, was vegetation, because we found out that there was great wine being produced on alluvial soils, and but we didn't really know exactly.
Well, let me get your name and number.
How to control that vigor, and so we went into an experimental program.
I know where at.
As soon as the grapes became mature enough to make where I could make wine from them.
So you were doing like a test plot or something? Or?
Yeah, I planted 12 acres to begin with, and then we did a whole bunch of experimentation on how to grow those grapes.
And this was before, or this is the process where you were developing your trellis system?
Mm-hmm.
Or?
Yeah, we were trying to find something that would work and produce high quality, fruit for wine, and on this rich ground. So we just tried a whole bunch of different things.
Like what kind of things did you try?
Well, we varied crop loads from, let's say, a couple tons per acre to as high as 10 tons per acre.
By thinning or?
Yeah, by thinning and doing different things. We did different forms of trimming.
Trimming the vegetation.
We looked at leaf pulling and leaf plucking. Anything you could imagine that we could do on a vertical trellis system, because we were on a VSP. I mean, basically we were a VSP, vertical shoot position system.
Yeah.
Which is pretty common back in those days, and it still is pretty common on hillside ground. And so we just wanted to say, well, how could we, make the fruit better? When the vines were young, the wines were quite good because, again, they were open. They're young vines just starting out. And then as they began to mature, and we looked at spacing too. That was another thing we looked at.
And which way were you going? I mean, with the spacing?
Well, we went tight. Well, we went as large as we are here, which was 7 by 12, and we went as tight as like 3 by 3. And so that was one of the things that we looked at also.
And you found that the larger spacing was produced better fruit.
That's correct.
Boy, that is so counterintuitive to me.
I know. Well, the reason is if you go tight spacing, you just raise too much fruit. You would just raise too much fruit because the vine puts out. There is no restriction on this kind of ground for tight spacing. There's no competition.
Yeah, just because the soil is so rich.
They just roots go right on down, and they.
You want to take that, or do you want me to?
What is it?
I think it's Diane or whatever that lives down the way here.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Scott. Yeah, hi. Good. That's the problem, because if you go tight spacing, you raise way too much fruit per acre. Then you got to go in and just.
Well, what's the disadvantage
hell
of having so each vine or each plant is cranking out the fruit, but even if you go wide spacing, isn't it producing just as much fruit?
Well, but you have a way to control it. See, that's tight spacing. What do? You can go in there and drop 3/4 of the crop, I guess, on the ground.
Yeah.
That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
How do you control it? You've removed all the capability to vary the trellis to do anything.
Oh, okay, I got it. Okay.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
So what we ended up with, we found that the tight spacing didn't work for us. Two, we found that we needed to balance the growth in the vine with crop load.
Okay, that makes sense.
So when we tried to grow one level of crop on a VSP to balance our growth that we would get here, we had trouble doing that. We had to leave like 2 canes on a wire, which meant there was a lot of fruit crowded, and we got fruit growing together, and that didn't seem to work. So what we did, we went to 2 levels of fruit.
And where did that idea come from? I mean, did you just, you were sleeping and all of a sudden you wake up and you say, hey, wait a minute?
We're just looking at all the possibilities,
Yeah.
So we said, well, let's, to spread the fruit out, okay, we'll go to 2 levels of fruit. So we do that. And as soon as we begin to work with that, we found that, okay, now we can take, the fruit's not crowded, and we can like double the crop load if we wanted to.
Yeah.
But whatever we wanted to, we had a lot more ability to vary the load on the plant to balance it. So we were looking after balance. Now we didn't want to be going in there every 2 weeks and chopping all this growth off there. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me either.
Yeah.
So we wanted the plant to actually self-regulate its growth by developing crop. And we found whenever we did that, we get the balance, what we call balance in the vine. The wine was the best. Okay, we were tasting wine from all these. The wine was better, always the best, not with low crop and not with high crop, but with the crop that gave us the proper growth balance in the vine.
I'm still kind of curious. It's like whenever you have like a good idea that works out. I mean, I see your trellis system all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's something like some little spark went off, somewhere. That well, wait a minute. Well, how about if we do this?
That was part of it. And then the other thing that we learned from the experimental stuff, or varying everything, was that whenever we brought the fruit out into the sun, especially with Pinot Noir, the quality of the wine went up.
Now that's total sun.
Yeah, well, at least part during the day, a few hours of sun on a cluster of grapes actually improves the quality.
So are you doing like facing, you get it so that they get sun on the east side, or some people are doing like partial shade?
Yeah, we did all that. We were varying all that. And so, but as we made the wines from that, we found out that whenever we had, let's say, Pinot Noir, that was a few hours of exposure of that cluster to the sun, the wine quality went up. Not only did the quality in terms of taste go up, but the color went up. The color increases.
The color of the skin.
Mm-hmm. Increased. Anthocyanins are increased in the skin.
Huh.
So the color goes up. You'd think, well, exposure to the sun would bleach the grape, but it doesn't. It does the exact opposite.
So it's actually reacting to. Is that the plant or is that the fruit?
Well, I think it's the fruit that's reacting to that.
Huh.
But anyway, that was the result. Okay, we knew that. Okay, now we got 2 levels of fruit, and basically we were again growing everything up because we had this VSP mentality. I mean, that's what we started with VSP. So we got 2 levels of fruit. Well, the trouble with that is that the lower one grows up and shades the upper one out. You have really good exposure on the lower one because it's growing vertically up, so the fruit's exposed down here.
Yeah,
But then it grew up over the second level
that makes sense.
and shaded it out. So we said, well, that is not good because of what we found, and we don't like that. And so I don't know. I can't remember we were Pinot Noir out there on a day, and I said, well, let's try this. Let's take the lower level and turn it down like a Geneva curtain. Let's turn it down and take the upper one and drain it up like a VSP.
Yeah.
So we started down one row. I still remember the row out here. And we're just going down the row, and we got about halfway down doing that. I said, hell, that's it. Because I knew we had the balance, in the vine with the crop load. I knew we had that. And
Yeah.
but as soon as we began to part like that, it's like parting your hair. I mean, all the fruit came out in the sun.
Yeah.
We got it.
Now, when was that? Like, you remember what year was that?
Yeah, this was late 70s, so it's like 78. So then, so we did it on about 10 rows. We could make 10 rows gave us enough wine, enough grapes, so we could make a tank of wine by itself. And so we did it on 10 rows to begin with, Pinot Noir, just to see how, and made the wines, and then began to evaluate the wines. And
Yeah.
wine tastings were hands down superior, way superior wines. And so we thought, well, okay, let's convert all of it. And it was an easy conversion on VSP because it was fairly easy to do.
Yeah.
And so we did, and then we got, the next thing that showed up was Chardonnay. So we had Chardonnay here. The problem with Chardonnay was that prone to bunch rot. And back in those days, we didn't have the chemical sprays that we do now. So
The bunch rot because of moisture.
Mm-hmm. And and as the vine would kind of close in on itself, there wasn't ways for those clusters to dry out after a rain like this. And they would rot, and all that was bad. So I said, well, let's try this system on Chardonnay because I know we open it up, we're going to get good exposure. Well, the other thing that we found, a little side benefit, was that when we divide the canopy like this and leave a window in the center, we get air movement through there. And the air movement dries things out quickly.
Yeah.
And so when we even have rains like this, rapidly drying out made for much better fruit in Chardonnay. Much less rust.
How'd you determine like how high, to make each layer?
We've been up and down.
Have you?
Yeah. It's one version is with the fellow Richard Smart and another guy. We tried this too, but they were cordon, okay. And if you got a cordon trained vine, basically on one level, then the way that you get to this system fairly close is just to divide it. You divide it, but there's no window.
Yeah.
So you still get a better exposure of the fruit and everything, but there's no window at all.
So like the top layer is going up, and then you've got a layer going down.
Yeah, it's all stuff.
Just split it like parting your hair or something.
Yeah, it's still better than anything else. And they coined their own name. We looked at that for a while, but we found out that the window offered us this air movement through the center of the vine, which offered more drying ability.
Yeah.
The other one, you part your hair, but it's still the air can't get through there.
Right. Still like a sail.
Yeah. And so, I don't know Richard Smart pretty well, so we had a big argument. But anyway, we were down in, I was down in Australia, and we were going around giving some presentations. And it was really funny one day. We're out in a vineyard, and Richard got a little device that would generate smoke. And he puts on all this gear, and anyway, he could generate smoke, and he says, "Now I'm going to show you, that there's no air movement through these windows,
through the hair parting system."
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, yeah. Well, the vineyard that we were in had a window.
Oh, it did. Okay.
Yeah, it
All
had a
right.
window in it. So we get out. I said, okay, let's go take a look. So he gets it clear up to the top of the vines, and the breeze is taking it over the top of the vine. I said, well, then, up there, I said, put it down where. Oh, he says there won't be any. He gets these little smoke, generates the smoke, and the smoke goes out and right through the window.
Well, it's real obvious. I mean, if you go through a vineyard, I mean, you can just look right through there.
I know it.
Yeah.
I know. And he
Huh.
goes, he says, there's not enough leaf on the.
Poor guy.
He had some excuse for it. It was funny.
And so
but anyway, it does. There is air movement through those windows, and that drying action, really helps in terms of saving fruit. Too.
Yeah. So how did you feel, during and right after that experiment?
Oh yeah, I thought it was fun. We had a big crowd. I mean,
Ooh.
it was like there must have been 100 growers there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a big crowd, and everybody really had a big laugh over it.
Yeah.
But
And so did you come away with a bigger ego, or?
No, I knew that air movement was important. Seeing the Chardonnay now in Pinot Noir, probably I don't know if it makes any difference in there because it's not as prone to the bunch rot and this kind of thing. And some varieties are very resistant to bunch rot, so maybe you don't need it.
Yeah.
Usually, when you cordon prune on these arms like that, you're looking at the later varieties, the Merlots and Cabernets and things like that are pretty tough. They don't really rot like a Chardonnay is just, you look at it and it wants to rot.
Yeah.
And so I think for Chardonnay it would be really important to have that air movement, maybe for cabs, and so you don't need it.
Yeah.
So if you don't need it, then you can do a smart dice.
So cab is pretty tough. I thought Merlot was a little sensitive.
It's more sensitive than cab, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Cab's really tough. Cab Franc is pretty tough too, and that Cabernet family is tough-skinned, so it doesn't rot very easily.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's where we came up with that, and then started. Well, and then eventually, I put everything on it because every vine I've got is on some form of a Scott Henry.
In some form, you say. So you've kind of varied, like what, like the.
No, I'm using about 6 or 7 different variations of it. There's different variations that you can do.
Like what do you vary? Like the distance?
Well, yeah, the distance can be varied. That's one.
Uh-huh.
The original system was sort of a two-tiered T. So you come up and you got one level out that's halfway to the next plant,
Uh-huh.
and then the next one's up halfway. So it's like 2 T's.
Yeah.
But then you can envision an S. Okay, so an S goes clear across from one plant on the top over, and then on the bottom goes clear over. So and we find that the S has some advantages because it tends to even out ripening. You can you can argue that maybe the lower level and the difference between lower and upper might have a different ripening. We don't find that much, but
because like one is closer to the ground or something.
Yeah, or maybe the crop level is a little different on the lower level versus the upper one, which you can vary by hand if you want to.
Uh-huh.
But we find an S tends to ripen very evenly. Oregon State did a 3-year study out here with S versus the standard, and found out that the S had much more consistent, let's say, fruit data lower to upper. I mean, there was really no difference.
And the S is like what you're doing is you're kind of creating a curve rather than going straight across the wire.
Well, yeah, you come across on the upper one,
Uh-huh.
clear across, and then you drop down and go on the lower.
Oh, okay, got it.
That's the S.
Got it. Okay.
And then the next one nests in with that,
Uh-huh.
So it's just a bunch of S's nested. Another way to do it is I've had people doing what we call U.
You.
Yeah, you can take the lower level clear across to this plant, and you can take the upper level clear across,
Uh-huh.
and then the next one's the same way.
Yeah.
Now that has some advantages, I think, over the standard double T because you have less canes to work with, so the expense of doing it is less. And that's the advantage of the S too. you know, with the 2 T's, you got 4 canes that you're working with.
Right.
And even though they're shorter, they still require about the same amount of time to work with. Whereas with the S, you've got 2 canes.
Right.
So it's, by the time you get through working with the vineyard, you saved a lot of expense because there's less canes to work with.
Yeah.
So it's cheaper.
Huh. And on the S though, like, are you getting? What about like fruit levels?
It's the same.
The same.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
The window's the same.
Yeah.
So we tend S is our preferred
Yeah.
route to go. It requires a little higher trellis system, which is probably good for this kind of ground. You know, where say with the wide spacing, we tend to go up. So, because another disadvantage of close packed spacing is that you have to go down. Because if you go up, they shade each other out.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah.
You can't go tall.
Huh.
So the more compact that your planting is, then the lower it has to get to the ground. And that's why I found out the French have good backs, I guess, because they've got tight spacing and they got to bend over to do everything, you know.
Well, and I think that's why you see like the older French are all kind of humped over too.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I bet your pickers really love your.
Oh, they love it.
Yeah.
So that's another advantage. It's open, you know. I mean, the fruit's right there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, you don't have
it's
to
easy
bend
to
over.
pick.
Yeah.
So harvest costs are less.
Because they can go through faster.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
pick more fruit quicker,
Yeah.
and it's easier on them, and I like doing it. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it works good.
So what's the future for for you and for Oregon wine?
Ooh, it's really big.
What's the catalyst and?
Well, I'd say it's really big because we're still a very young industry here. You know, I
In
mean,
Oregon or in Umpqua?
well, both. Even Oregon's young,
Yeah.
and you know, it takes a long time to kind of get recognized for fine wine worldwide, because that's eventually what you have to get the recognition for is worldwide, and it's taken a while for us to develop that reputation. We've done it with Pinot Noir, I think. I think we're there with Pinot Noir. Some of the other varieties are not there yet, and I think we make really good wine from those. It's just, and so you got to be around long enough and persistent enough to, you know, make your way. But there's a lot of ground that's left, plantable ground that's left. This particular area here, I think we did a survey. 140,000 acres can be planted here.
140,000.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's hillside or all?
That's everything.
Everything.
But you know, but this shows the potential. I mean, right? You know, we got what 600-700.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so it's like it's we already scratched the surface here of what we can do.
So what's the most important thing from your perspective about making like good wine?
Well, I think the important thing is, of course, I give the fruit is 80% of the battle.
Yeah. And so what's important there? I mean, some people say the soil, some people
Well,
say weather,
it's,
some people...
it's the match. It's the match of soil and variety. Because we see it here in the Umpqua. The Umpqua is a very interesting valley to research and take a look at, because depending on where we locate the fruit, we can do a really good job with any variety you want to name. Because we start very cold down here at Elkton, cooler than the Willamette Valley, and as we progress inland here, it gets warmer and warmer.
And that's because of elevation or microclimates,
No,
or
it's just the microclimates. It's just the interior valleys are warmer. They have, you know, less influence of the.
Oops, sorry.
Less influence from the coast, from the ocean. So here we're looking at where the river cuts through the coast range. So I'm looking right at, you know, I'm the first valley.
Yeah.
And so the air's moving upriver from the coast. It's cool. So they're the coolest because they're further downriver than I am. Elkton is, and then I'm the next system here.
Yeah.
By the time you get into Roseburg, which is what, 15 miles from here, we're out of Pinot Noir country.
It's too hot.
It's too hot.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. We had guys try it in South County. It's not good Pinot.
Yeah.
But good Merlot and Cabernet country. So
yeah.
So as you go inland, it just keeps getting warmer and warmer.
Yeah.
So depending as a winery and being able to source fruit from anywhere, I can source excellent fruit for any variety you want to name.
And so in your area right here, you're kind of like you're like the first open valley area, and you can do Pinot.
I can still do Pinot because of the cool air moving up from the coast here.
Ah.
But as it fans out into the valley system here, we lose that cooling influence, and then we get into interior valley, warm environment, and that's where cabs, the Spanish varieties, are doing well. Stuff that takes a lot of heat.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't do well here with, like on my side, I've got some Cabernet Sauvignon planted and some Merlot. I mean, I've tried everything, but I don't do as well as guys in South County.
Just not enough heat and not
enough heat.
Yeah.
And I think I could eventually, but I can't get them right quick enough. The season runs out, we get the rains and we're over and it's done, and I'm not ripe.
Yeah.
You get South County where they get a lot more heat units, then they can get it ripe.
Yeah.
So it's.
What about geology? Here is like the most contemporary period is like the river and all the alluvial soil that came in here.
Well, alluvial soils are only just part of it. Because I don't know, we added up. We have about as many acres. It's about equal, the number of acres on alluvial soils as on the clay-based soils. It's about equal. So you can grow it both ways. It's here. See, that's another. The Umpqua Valley is just so versatile in what it can do that there's, in a way, a disadvantage, because the disadvantage is that we're not known or suited for one particular variety or one type of growing. I mean, we can do it. We can do anything.
Yeah.
And we can do it well, depending on how we cite, our grapes and which varieties we're growing and this kind of thing.
What's underneath? I'm trying to look back, like up in the north. The volcanic stuff came through first. Like the basalt is down there, and then all the way through probably the most recent stuff is like the Missoula floods brought in. What in terms of geology here?
Well, it's all, this. Well, the ground I have here, it's all volcanic, alluvial volcanic soils that have come down from the Cascade Range and mountains.
So
that's what's coming down here on the bottom. The hillside ground here is the result of the Coast Range. So, and that Coast Range is just it's not volcanic, it's just
the plate going
plate,
up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so it's total different soils. I mean, they're just and almost any kind you want, depending on where you find it. I mean, it just varies all over the map.
That's interesting, huh?
Yeah, a lot of it can be clay soils that can give you a problem because they retain, water.
It's a little heavy.
The heavy soils, yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful because there's some areas that just wouldn't work.
Where that clay soil? Where does that come from?
Well, that's interesting. When it gets on the hillsides, obviously, probably the old ocean floor, I guess.
So it's that plate that
plate's coming up.
And
it's the old.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And but it carries with it a whole bunch of different kinds of soils.
Yeah.
I think it's just the old ocean floor, I guess.
Huh.
Being jammed up in the air with this plate.
Yeah. What about like it seems like the Willamette Valley is getting that kind of the Oregon recognition, and down here in Umpqua, I mean, you guys are doing a lot of stuff down here, but it doesn't seem like you're getting the recognition that that Dundee gets, or McMinnville, or the Red Hills of Dundee.
Yeah. Well, there's more of them up there.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it started here,
Yeah.
and but they have, let's say, bigger area that they can grow the fruit in. We talked about the acreage we have here. They got probably 100 times that up there.
Yeah.
And so there's many more wineries that developed up there. I think also based on population centers. Makes a sense to grow the wine where you can sell it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So down here, population base is pretty small.
So you want Roseburg to buy more wine?
Yeah. Yeah. But there's only so many others.
You can only drink so much.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so we just don't have the big towns, So that's a disadvantage. I think eventually this area is really going to prosper.
What makes you say that?
I'll say it for a couple of reasons. One is we do have a good source of buying power, and we just aren't taking really good advantage of it. They're going to want to clean in here.
Oh.
We're not taking very good advantage of it, and that is the I-5 traffic. We have a corridor of, there's millions of people moving up and down I-5, and we are just not taking really good advantage of that yet.
Yeah.
And I think we will as we grow and we can become a bigger and bigger attraction. The tourist center out here on the highway, right out here, came by the other day, and she says, we need to do more to get more people off the freeway to our centers. And I said, well, we'd be happy to work with you. Why are you coming to us? And she says, because right now 90% of all the people that are entering our office are there because of the wine industry.
Wow.
Yeah, 90%.
Wow.
So that attraction is there, And
Yeah.
so we need to take advantage of it. The other thing is, while I'm thinking of it, is I'm working with a community college here. We're going to develop a 2-year program in growing grapes and making wine. College tends to be, when you develop that kind of thing, based on other places that we've looked at, tends to be a strong attraction for the industry. And I think you're going to see the number of wineries go from like 15 or whatever we are, 18 now, to I'll bet close to 80 in 10 years. Just because of the synergism of the college, and people being able to stay here and work here and in the I-5 corridor to support us.
So the college is like kids are deciding, well, let's see what do I want to be when I grow up,
Yeah.
and well, hey, this course in in winemaking.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. And as the industry develops, then we can keep our kids here.
Yeah.
They'll go through the course, they'll become a good assistant winemaker or assistant grape grower, and be able to stay here. They don't have to go to Walla Walla or the Willamette Valley to find work.
One last question is like the history. I look at it like where things supposedly start. It's like I've heard Britt down in Applegate down there had a winery going up
Mm-hmm.
here. The names
Hillcrest. Richard Summer was the one that
Yeah,
started.
and then but Dorner.
Dorner's before Prohibition.
Yeah, and then there was like.
Old winery's still over here.
I was going to ask you about that, and is it possible like they don't have a sign or anything out there?
I got a picture of it, I think.
Do you?
Here, I'll show you. It's Bonner Winery number 7.
Wow. So you were a rebel and moved away from the family farm to become an aerospace engineer.
Well, sort of, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. I always did like mathematics and that kind of stuff, so I went up to Oregon State. And actually, when I went up there, I thought, well, I might take agriculture because that was my background. And then I took a look at forestry because we do raise forest trees on the ranch also. So that might be a shot. And then I sat in on an engineering seminar where they were talking about engineering.
Uh-huh.
And that got me kind of interested, so I decided, well, I'll take a shot at engineering. And I had a friend that was doing the same thing, so we roomed together, and one thing led to another. So then when I graduated,
Go around there.
yeah, I think that's right. When I graduated, of course, I took aeronautical engineering as so obviously I didn't go back to the farm. Went down and it was an interesting age to be in the rocket business because it was we're in the race to the moon.
Yeah.
The whole thing then was really hopping and doing quite well. So anyway, I stayed there 14 years, and then that whole business kind of went downhill, and I was looking for other things. My dad got ill, and he was running the farm here, so I said, well, maybe I'll come back. But by then I had developed some friends that had started a winery in Napa Valley. And so I was over there helping them out and doing all kinds of things with them. And I said, well, I'll come back to the farm. But I'm going to bring some grapes with me. Is that okay? So that's what started the whole thing. So I came back and planted. First thing I did was plant 12 acres of grapes. So.
And what did you plant?
I planted mostly Pinot Noir.
And that was like your thought process to choose Pinot?
Yeah, we thought because of the site, and the temperature. Of course, we researched, being engineers, researched the hell out of it. We thought because of the site and the temperature profiles and everything, the Pinot Noir would do well. So we planted Pinot Noir and Chardonnay and a little bit of Gewürztraminer.
So now, did you look at what Summer was doing and what Dorner had done?
Oh yeah, we looked at that. Looked at all the temperature information here and soils and like as I mentioned before, the richness of the soil we thought could be a problem, but we solved it. So.
Yeah.
So that was good, and so that's what got me back here, to the farm. So I've been here ever since.
Yeah. And no regrets.
No.
Yeah. So are you still doing math out there?
Oh yeah. Well, engineering comes into play every once in a while. It's development of the trellising system was an engineering approach to a problem, and I had no idea that when I developed that system that I was unique, because I figured, 2,000 years of growing grapes. I mean, somebody's come up with that. I just didn't know about it. I wasn't conversant enough to really know, and so it's. So it comes into play at times. I just solved it by engineering approach.
Yeah.
You got all these parameters, and let's vary them and see what works.
Yeah, but there was a creative spark. I mean, that's a serious creative spark that, like, we got to try this. Or, I mean, that's, thinking out of the box.
Yeah, I get.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you get educated, the box closes you in. You don't think out of the box because you think, I'm not going to do that because they say it's not the thing to do. Yeah,
but the same thing happens with tradition, too. I mean, that's why France, those guys have been doing it for so long that's the only way they think. And then they come over here and, whoa, this is kind of interesting here. Yeah, and we don't have to bend over quite so far.
Yeah, they get locked into, tradition.
So, do you have a patent on the system or anything like that?
No, we thought about it. Just too hard to enforce, and do that kind of thing. So what I do get out of it, though, is I get a fair number of trips and, and invites to go and present how I came up with it and how it's working kind of thing on the trellis system. So I've had trips to New Zealand, trips to Australia, and trips in the United States.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're famous. I mean, up in the Willamette, like when I first heard Scott Henry system, I thought, God, I got to meet that Scott Henry guy. Where is he? Umpqua, wow.
Still alive. Over the years, I found out there's three things that I run into. Okay, first of all, they think that, the first guy I ran into was down in New Zealand. He thought I'd be 9 feet tall. I said, no, I'm not.
Why's that?
I'm not. Just because of the fact that the system was working so well for him. I walked out into these vineyards and I said, I'm Scott Henry from Oregon. I was there for a conference, And this was way back when it was just getting started. And he said,
What
he
year
said-
was that then?
This was in '82.
82.
And I said, well, I'm Scott Henry from Oregon. Here, mind looking at the grapes? He says, not Scott Henry of the Scott Henry trellis system. And I said, well, I don't know. I really hadn't thought about the name. I said, show it to me. And so I said, yeah, that's it. That's where he said, oh my God, I thought you'd be 9 feet tall. So it was working. I mean, it actually just saved some of their butts down there. It really did.
Because of the moisture and
I ran into big vineyard operations that were going out of business just because of the vigor and the quality of the fruit was down, and they weren't making very good wine,
wow.
and they were in deep trouble. And they converted over to this trellis system and solved the whole thing for them.
So how did they hear about that?
Well, because of the guy that worked really hard on the system was Richard Smart, who worked for the university in New Zealand for a while, and then over in Australia.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of where, I mean, the southern part of the hemisphere is the one that's picked up big time on because of his work in the university down there.
So he was kind of like your disciple, or
He's the Johnny Appleseed
Yeah.
of Scott Henry trellis system. Yeah, he was. Anyway, so I said, well, he said, 9 feet. I don't know, I'm not 9 feet tall. What? So over the years, I found I'm either 9 feet tall, or I'm two guys. I'm a Scott and a Henry. Must have been two guys that put this thing together, or I'm dead. I said, well, I hate to pop all those bubbles, but I'm not any of those.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that your trellis system is used a lot up in the Willamette.
Yeah.
Too, especially like a lot of vineyards. I'll see it like on the hills.
Here's the funny thing that happened though. Okay, it went from here to the southern hemisphere because of the work that Richard Smart did, and so they converted a lot of vineyards in New Zealand over, because they're all volcanic soil down there. They were rich. I mean, they had the same problems. And then went to Australia, and then because I could tell where people were calling, and then pretty soon I started getting a few calls from Europe, and so it's used over there a little bit, but they're so steeped in tradition generally that it's a problem. And then I started getting calls from the East Coast.
Huh?
Okay.
Like New York.
New York, and there's some vineyards there that were beginning to look at it because they heard about it and everything.
Uh-huh.
And it sort of comes back around. So about that time, I get invited to go up to Oregon State University to give a presentation on Scott Henry trellis system. I said, hell yeah, I'll do it. So I walk in the room. This is back in the days when most of us knew each other, and there's rooms full of about 70, 80 people, And he said, well, we want to introduce Scott Henry. He's going to present the Scott Henry trellis system. I get up there, and like half the room goes, "You're not the Scott Henry of it," because they thought it was some guy from Australia.
Oh, is that right?
Same name. Yeah, it's me.
You're in our own backyard.
Yeah. They didn't realize it. But then after that, then Oregon began to pick up, and use it. So, and it works on any, even on hillside properties in general. There'll be an area that's richer than the rest.
I see it. It's like on the hillside they don't use it, but down it'll level off.
As they get into the richer soils, then you go to it. That's a logical thing to do.
Yeah.
And the French, see, that's what really, when I went over there, you look at, go to Burgundy, right?
Uh-huh.
And I said, those guys are so stupid. I mean, they grow the same exact vine and technique on the top of the hill as they do on the slope as on the bottom.
Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah, but they've been doing it.
I know, and they do a good job. but they don't think much of this property as it gets richer and levels out.
Yeah.
And the reason is they're using an approach that only works on the slopes.
Yeah.
They got to change that as they go onto the richer ground.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and they won't do it because it's locked in with regulations.
Regulations and
the government, they won't let them do it.
Uh-huh.
The spacing and
it's all regulated.
It's all regulated.
Yeah.
I guess we